Hi, I'm Keisha. This Thanksgiving, my mom texted me, "Thanks for existing, don't come." I'd been paying the rent, covering the Wi Fi, even keeping the lights on. But in their story, I was just squatting, just there. Then I found fake leases in my name, a stolen credit line from when I was 17, a scholarship I never even knew I lost because they made sure I stayed close, useful, silent. What kind of family does that? And if they could lie that easily, what else were they hiding? Thanksgiving morning arrived with the kind of gray sky that felt like a held breath, overcast, wet, still. I had just finished brewing coffee, the kitchen filled with the quiet hiss of the machine, when my phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up. Mom. I didn't expect warmth. Our conversations had become colder over the years. But what I read stunned me still. "Thanks for existing, don't come." That was it. No good morning, no happy Thanksgiving, just those 6 words. I stared at the message, blinking hard, half expecting it to rewrite itself into something more human, something less final. But it didn't change, and deep down, I knew it wouldn't. From the other side of the apartment, I could hear Casey laughing on FaceTime, her voice bright and easy as she dabbed on makeup in my bathroom. She was already dressed for dinner, for their dinner. I stood there with my coffee going cold in my hand, the text still glowing on the screen. I didn't reply, didn't ask why. I just swallowed it, like I had every other subtle rejection before it. This wasn't the first time I'd been left out, but it was the first time it came wrapped in a thank you card soaked in venom. 2 days earlier, while I was folding laundry, Casey had dropped a little truth bomb like it was nothing. "Oh, by the way," she'd said while checking her reflection, "I told Mom you're just kind of staying here for now, since your name's not on the lease." I remember pausing, towel in hand. "What?" She didn't even flinch. "It's not a big deal. Just makes it easier, you know. They don't need to think you're like, freeloading off me or something." "But I'm paying the rent," I said, voice flat. "Yeah," she shrugged. "Still, it's just easier this way." She said it like she was doing me a favor, like erasing me was somehow a kindness. It had been over a year since Casey moved in, promising it was just for a month or two while she figured things out. I picked up the slack, rent, groceries, electricity. I gave up my gym membership, cut back on takeout, skipped vacations, and in return, I became a background character in my own life. Growing up, it had always been like this. Casey, the golden child, the chaotic artist who just needed a little extra support. Me, the quiet one who held it together. Birthdays were forgotten, school achievements overlooked, unless they made Casey look good by association. Once in middle school, I won a local writing contest. Mom threw the certificate in the trash because she thought it was just a flyer. But when Casey got an honorable mention in a sketch competition, we went out for ice cream and Mom told the waiter like it was national news. Some patterns run so deep you stop noticing the cut. By noon, Casey had left for the family dinner. No hug, no acknowledgement of what day it was. She'd tossed on her scarf, kissed the mirror, and vanished. Her absence made the apartment quieter than usual, but not in a peaceful way. It felt hollow, like someone had taken the air with them. I reheated the turkey sandwich I made the night before, set one plate, poured a second cup of coffee, even though no one else was coming. I placed it opposite me out of habit, then laughed at myself and drank both. They were probably sitting around the big table at Mom's house by then, passing the sweet potatoes, smiling for Facebook photos. My seat, if it was ever really mine, sat empty. Again, I didn't call, didn't text, didn't beg. I've learned that sometimes silence is stronger than any explanation. Instead, I opened my notebook. On the first line, I wrote, "They don't get to define me by absence anymore." I was still there, still paying the bills, still keeping the lights on, and yet, somehow, to them, I had become invisible. Keisha? Oh, she's just squatting, just drifting, just there. Funny thing is, you start to believe it yourself. Until one morning, with a mug in your hand and a message on your phone, the lie breaks. And what shatters isn't just trust. It's the version of yourself you kept twisting to stay loved. I stayed at the kitchen table long after the coffee had gone cold. The kind of stillness settled in that doesn't comfort you, just turns up the volume on every thought you've been avoiding. I'd washed the plate, wiped down the counter, even lined up the salt and pepper shakers like some desperate bid for normalcy. But nothing touched the weight sitting in my chest. I kept staring at the phone screen. The message still glared back at me, sharp and unblinking. No follow-up, no explanation, just the digital equivalent of a door closing in your face. "Hey, Casey said you'd be busy. We'll catch up another time, okay?" It was the smiley face that did it, that smug little curve at the end of a sentence built to dismiss, a full stop disguised as friendliness. It confirmed something I'd been sidestepping for a long time, years maybe, a nagging sense that something wasn't right, not just this year, not just this holiday, but something deeper, something rotten under the floorboards of our family dynamic. I didn't want to believe it, but here it was, simple, casual, neatly phrased. By early afternoon, the clouds had folded over the city, dimming everything into a dull gray. The apartment was silent again. Casey was gone, probably already charming her way through mashed potatoes and half glasses of wine, the golden child with perfect timing and a short memory. And me? I was here, alone in the silence I hadn't chosen but had somehow inherited. I opened my laptop, not to scroll or distract myself, but because I needed something concrete. Something I could point to and say, "See, I'm not crazy." Proof that what I was feeling had roots, that I wasn't just overreacting or stuck in some bitter loop. It started slow. A half-hearted scroll through my email. Nothing exciting. Overdue notices, sale announcements, automated reminders from apps I barely used. Then, tucked between a PayPal receipt and a Spotify promo, I saw it. A Venmo notification I didn't recognize. $45 to K.Todd. Memo, groceries for us. That's what it said, emojis and all. But I don't use emojis like that, not when money's involved, and I definitely didn't send it. I opened the Venmo app and scrolled through the history. More transactions popped up, not from me, these were from my mother's account. A trail of payments, each tagged with chirpy memos and emoji hearts, payments I'd never heard about, never seen mentioned. $80, gas and Wi-Fi, $32, split the Uber, and they all went to the same recipient, K.Todd. The name itched at the back of my mind, familiar in a way that made my stomach clench. I tapped on the profile. No photo, just a blank face and a username I couldn't ignore. K.Todd, Todd. Todd was Casey's ex, the same guy who ghosted her a decade ago after stringing her along for 2 years. He'd vanished, at least that's what we were told. But his name had never fully disappeared. Every once in a while it would pop up again in odd places, as a saved password hint, as a leftover profile on our shared Hulu account. It became a running joke. Todd, the digital ghost. But it wasn't funny anymore, because Casey had used that name before, when she didn't want things traced back to her. And now, here it was again, attached to our mother's money. And I was supposed to believe this was all just coincidence? No way. A new clarity hit me, sharp and unwanted. 2 months ago, Casey hadn't asked me to spot her rent like she usually did. No desperate texts, no explanations. I'd assumed she got a freelance gig. She said she did. I was even proud of her, believing she was finally standing on her own. But I knew better now. She didn't need help that month, because she already had it, from Mom. Funneled through a name that didn't belong to either of them. A system built on omission and old tricks. And I was the idiot holding the safety net. I logged into my bank account, heart thudding, scanned the history. The rent I paid landed on the 2nd of the month. The transfer from Mom to K.Todd? The first. Not a coincidence. Not even close. It was a cover. I leaned back from the screen, blood buzzing in my ears. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a missed conversation. This was a structure. One where Casey played the helpless artist, charming and full of stories, and I, steady, responsible, carried the weight without question. I was the backup generator they never acknowledged, just running in the background, quietly keeping the lights on. And now, I wasn't just excluded from Thanksgiving dinner. I was being phased out of the truth entirely. The part that hurt the most wasn't the money. It was how easy it was for them, how naturally they edited me out. As if I took up space they'd rather save for someone more palatable. I started printing. Every statement, every receipt. I took screenshots, created folders, named them with clinical precision. Rent transfers, cross-check, Venmo history, mom to K.Todd, Casey payment overlap. My hands didn't tremble. I wasn't panicking. I was archiving. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet. Maybe nothing, maybe everything, but I needed the record. I needed to see it in black and white, to confirm that the ache in my gut had a name. Somewhere around the fourth printout, I whispered something I hadn't even realized I was thinking. If they want to pretend I don't exist, let's see what else they've erased. I paused. The room felt colder, the air heavier. I glanced back at the screen, clicked through old folders, backups from years ago, files I hadn't opened since college. Somewhere deep in the labyrinth of outdated hard drive copies, I saw a PDF I didn't recognize. First credit line, 2009.pdf. That's when I found it. And I knew I wasn't done digging, not by a long shot. By the time sunlight finally broke through the blinds the next morning, the kitchen table looked nothing like the quiet, harmless space it used to be. It had transformed into something between a war zone and an archive. Paper was everywhere, some crumpled, others neatly stacked, most of it stained with circles from last night's coffee mug. Receipts, statements, screen grabs, and hand-scribbled notes sprawled across the surface like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't even realized I'd been solving. In the middle of the chaos, like the glowing center of some investigation board, sat my laptop, still open, still lit, still waiting. I hadn't really slept. Maybe 3 hours, curled up sideways on the couch, a too-thin throw blanket failing to cover my feet. My neck ached, my eyes burned, my spine was one big knot, but my brain wouldn't shut off. The hum of the refrigerator was the only consistent sound through the night, aside from the occasional rustle of a paper I accidentally nudged with my foot or elbow. I never touched the pie I bought for myself. Pumpkin, from the overpriced bakery on 6th. It sat in the fridge, untouched, still wrapped in its bakery box like it was waiting for some celebration that never came. It felt like a bad joke now, like I was the only one who didn't know Thanksgiving had been canceled for me. My cursor hovered over the file that started it all. First credit line, 2009.pdf. I clicked. It opened to a dull, official-looking form. Retail store branding faded and off-center, like it had been scanned 1,000 times. My full name was printed at the top of the page in clean, almost mechanical handwriting. Address filled in, phone number, social security number, everything lined up. Except one thing. I didn't fill this out. The handwriting wasn't mine. It was neater, older, more careful than I had ever been at 17. And when I scrolled to the bottom, I stopped breathing for a second. The signature was supposed to be mine. It even looked close. But it tilted too far to the right. And the loop in the S of Keisha curled upward, not downward. The same way my mother used to sign every permission slip, every sick note, every check she ever wrote. And just like that, it came back. Senior year. One Friday afternoon, I was rushing out the door to catch the bus. Backpack unzipped, hair still damp from a rushed shower. Mom stopped me at the kitchen counter, slipping a blank form on top of my geometry notebook. "Sign this real quick," she said. "It's for the field trip form I forgot to turn in." No hesitation, I signed. Of course I did. She was my mom. I didn't even read it. Turns out it wasn't for a field trip. It was for this. A store credit account, opened in my name, using my information, with her address. And the kicker? She never paid it. Not once. My eyes stung as I scanned through the document again. Account activity, missed payments, fees, closure, balance charged off. The debt had lived quietly in the background of my life for years, sabotaging things without making a sound. When I was 20, I tried to rent my first off-campus apartment. I had saved, budgeted, even found a roommate on Craigslist I didn't totally hate. The leasing office pulled my credit and the woman behind the desk gave me that look. Sympathetic, but firm. "You might want to check your credit," she said carefully. "It's not great." I remember the heat crawling up my face as I nodded, thanked her, and walked out, blinking back tears. I thought I'd made some terrible mistake, that I'd done something wrong. Maybe I forgot to pay something. Maybe I applied for something and didn't understand how it worked. But I never missed a payment because I never had anything to pay. It wasn't me, it was her, and she never told me. Not even when I cried on the phone about getting denied for my first credit card. Not when I panicked over the interest rates on student loans. Not once did she step in, sit me down, and admit what she'd done. She just let me carry the blame. I scrolled through the rest of the file. It felt like watching someone take an eraser to the margins of my life. Not big, obvious moments, just small, crucial chances, credit lines, approval letters, a future slowly strangled before it even had air. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an accident. This was identity theft. From my own mother. My body went still. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I sat with my arms wrapped around myself like I had to physically keep my ribcage from caving in. Like holding still was the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It wasn't just about money or credit scores. It was about opportunity, about what she took from me before I even had a chance to defend it. Years of confusion, self-blame, missed milestones, all of it traced back to a single forged signature. I thought about every no I'd ever gotten that didn't make sense, every job that wanted a credit check, every bank that rejected my application, every landlord who smiled and said, "Sorry, nothing we can do." And I thought it was my fault. It was never my fault. It was her. That morning, something in me changed. The grief hardened into something sharper. I wasn't just sad anymore. I was focused. I wasn't crying. I was cataloging. I pulled up everything I could. Emails, PDFs, screenshots, bank letters. I started connecting dots, tracing timelines, finding patterns. I created folders with names like 2009 fraud, credit trail mom, suspicious transfers. I wasn't just surviving now. I was investigating. Because if she did this once, what else had she done? How far did it go? I opened a folder I had saved for tax season. Something boring I hadn't looked at in over a year. It was labeled Housing Docs 2021. Just a backup in case I ever needed to reprint my lease agreement. I clicked it open, expecting utility bills or scanned copies of my rental history. Instead, I found a PDF, a lease agreement, my apartment, my address, but the leaseholder? Casey, not me. Her name was on the lease. She'd been living here too, sure, but the primary tenant was her. I felt the ground tilt. If my name wasn't even on the lease, what else had they done behind my back? What else had they taken? And just like that, the case got bigger. I didn't wait. I couldn't. There are moments when hesitation feels like surrender, and I wasn't in the mood to lose anything else. By 9:10 a.m. on Saturday, I was already parked outside the leasing office downtown, engine off, my fingers drumming against the steering wheel. The manila folder sat on the passenger seat beside me, like a quiet co-pilot, thick with everything I'd printed the night before, copies of lease documents, financial statements, emails, annotated screenshots, a list of names and dates I couldn't forget even if I wanted to. My body felt wired but heavy, like my nerves were stuck in high gear and my bones were filled with cement. I took one breath, then another, then I grabbed the folder and got out of the car. The building was everything I expected and somehow worse. Beige walls that had once tried to pass for warm neutral, an outdated reception desk with fake potted plants, and piped-in top 40 hits from the early 2000s humming softly through the ceiling speakers. The scent of industrial carpet cleaner clung to the air like it didn't want to leave. A woman behind the desk greeted me without lifting her eyes from her monitor. "Hi there. What can I help you with today?" I kept my voice steady, measured. "I need a copy of the current lease agreement for my apartment at Chestnut Grove, Unit 3B. She nodded absently and started typing. "Sure, just need your name for the file?" "Keisha Todd." And just like that, her hands paused mid-keystroke. Not dramatically, just a quiet freeze, like her system had returned something unexpected. She looked at the screen, then up at me with a smile that tightened around the edges. "I'm sorry," she said, tone suddenly a little too careful, "but the leaseholder on file for that unit is Casey Todd, since March." For a moment, everything inside me went still. My heart didn't race, my stomach didn't drop. It hardened. That's not right, I said slowly. I signed the original lease 3 years ago. I've renewed it every year. I pay the rent. I handle the maintenance requests. I live there, not her. The woman glanced toward a door down the hallway. Would you like to speak with the property manager? 5 minutes later, I was seated across from a man named Greg, mid-30s if that, the kind of guy who wore a blazer to look older, but still gave off the vibe of someone who coached JV soccer on weekends. He offered a practiced smile and printed a thick packet from the desktop behind his desk. Let's see what we've got, he said, flipping through the pages. Original lease, signed in August 2020. You're listed as primary, yes. But the most recent renewal in March of this year, that was submitted under Casey Todd's name. He slid the packet toward me. I opened it. Page by page, it was like watching myself be erased. There on page 2, my name, printed and then crossed out in black ink. Below it, Casey's name, written in bubbly cursive like a teenager signing a yearbook. And then, stapled to the last page, a notarized affidavit. From my mother. Confirming Casey as the rightful leaseholder and resident, citing mail routing complications and shared familial access. I stared at the signature, her loopy handwriting unmistakable. Notarized and stamped, dated 3 days after I left town for work in February. She said she'd drop off the renewal for me, I murmured, more to myself than anyone else. Said she'd make sure it got there while I was in Dayton. Greg raised his eyebrows. You didn't deliver it personally? No, I was at a hospital training for work. 4 days. She said she'd handle it. My voice sounded flat, unfamiliar. The envelope was sealed, labeled. I left it on the table. They must have swapped it, altered it, replaced it with this. I handed it over willingly. They didn't steal it. I gave them the opportunity, and they took it. Greg leaned forward slightly, brow furrowed. So, to be clear, you never signed this renewal? No, I said. I didn't even see that version of the lease until right now. He nodded slowly. Okay, I'll make a note of that in your file, but... He hesitated. It was notarized. That's going to complicate things legally. I let the words settle, and then I said quietly but without apology, it was notarized by my mother, the same woman who told me not to come to Thanksgiving this year because I make things complicated. Greg didn't have anything to say to that. He just nodded again, slowly, like someone who wanted to look understanding without getting involved. I left the office with 3 printed copies of the lease, a copy of the notarized affidavit, and a verbal agreement that all future correspondence regarding the unit would be sent to both my name and Casey's, regardless of who was listed as leaseholder. It wasn't justice, but it was a paper trail. Back home, I scanned every page, uploaded them to a new encrypted drive, backed it up to the cloud, backed it up again to a portable hard drive I hadn't touched since senior year of college. This wasn't about being paranoid. This was about protection. This was my shield. And maybe, just maybe, it was also the start of something more. That night, I cleared the kitchen table again, moved the stacks of documents with care, not chaos. This time, I wasn't just reacting. I was building something. I grabbed a lined notepad, opened it to a blank page, and pressed a bright yellow sticky note right in the center. In all caps, I wrote, "Don't test me again." I underlined it twice. Then I began a new list. Names, dates, transactions, logins I didn't recognize, bills I never paid but somehow affected me. Every quiet betrayal, every moment I'd been made invisible on paper, I wrote down in ink. Because if they were going to lie with documents and signatures and notaries, I was going to answer with records. And this time, I was keeping score. I didn't even make it through Sunday breakfast before the next punch landed. A letter slid through the mail slot around 11:20 a.m., while I was pouring coffee and folding the dish towel back over the oven handle. I heard the soft thunk on the floor and thought it was another coupon booklet, until I saw the logo in the corner. Capital One. I hadn't opened any new account. I hadn't applied for anything. Not recently. Not ever, under that name. Still, I tore the envelope open, steam rising from my untouched mug. Welcome to your new card member experience, the letter read. New account approval. Limit, $3,000. Card ending in 9812. Billing address, my apartment. Application date, November 8th. My pulse thudded behind my teeth. That was 2 weeks ago. I had no memory of doing this. None. I called the number printed in bold red near the bottom. The customer rep picked up after 3 rings. Hi, thank you for calling Capital One. Can I verify your name and the last 4 digits of your social? I did. She pulled up the record. Looks like this account was approved online. Application submitted under Keisha Todd. Same birth date. Email registered is keys.todd21@gmail. I don't have a Gmail with that handle. I asked, where was the card mailed? Same as billing, your address. That's when the nausea started to settle in. And there have already been transactions, she added. Sephora, DoorDash, Apple Store, and an online boutique called LuxSpark. I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there. Casey. She'd done it again. I pulled up my email and searched for the Gmail variation. It had been listed as a recovery option for an old Yahoo account I never used anymore, probably added years ago, during one of the times I let her borrow my laptop. The pieces fit too easily. The charges? All things she'd casually mentioned receiving as gifts last week. Oh my God, I won this makeup set, she'd said, holding up a box. People online are so generous sometimes. No, people like me were just easy to steal from. At 4 p.m. I stepped outside, walked aimlessly down Broad Street, cold air biting my fingertips. Downtown was already lit for the holidays, silver garlands strung between traffic lights, store windows sparkling with fake snow and false cheer. I wasn't angry, not in the firestorm way. I was a glacier, cold, immovable, rising. By the time the sun began to dip behind the old courthouse, I was back in my apartment. Casey's boots were by the door, brand new, glossy, black with a gold zipper up the side. She was in the living room, scrolling on her phone like nothing had happened. I walked to the kitchen table, sat down, opened the folder I'd updated the night before, and waited. She didn't look up. You used my name, I said flatly. My social, my credit. She blinked, looked over her shoulder. Are you seriously still on that? I confirmed it. I spoke with Capital One this morning. She scoffed. You're so dramatic. You act like the world's ending every time someone borrows your stapler. I didn't flinch. This isn't borrowing, it's federal. Oh, please. She rolled her eyes. You always play the victim. Maybe now you'll stop acting so perfect. I stood. This is your last warning, I said calmly. You contact the card company. You cancel the account, you pay it off, or the next conversation we have will be with a police report between us. She laughed, but it was a nervous laugh, thin around the edges. You wouldn't dare. I didn't respond. I just walked into my bedroom, shut the door, and opened my laptop. The identitytheft.gov portal glowed bright in the dark. By midnight, the report was submitted, the screenshots uploaded, the statement signed. I didn't shake. I didn't second guess. At 12:03 a.m., I stood in front of the mirror, placed a new sticky note next to the one from yesterday. Silence isn't grace, it's permission. Not anymore. By Monday morning, I thought I had seen the worst of it, but violations have layers, and Casey wasn't finished. I was rinsing out my coffee mug when my phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me said answer it. Is this Miss Keisha Todd? A male voice asked, too formal to be friendly. Yes. This is Daniel from Coastal Recovery Group. We're calling to confirm the repayment terms of your recent $2,000 payday loan with Quickstream Financial. I didn't take out a payday loan. There was a pause. I could hear keyboard clacking. Then, it was processed under your name and social security number on November 15th. Funds were deposited to a Chime account. The address listed matches your current residence. My grip tightened around the sink edge. I need documentation. Certainly. We'll send a full digital copy of the application and transaction log to the email on file, which is keys.todd.21@gmail.com. Of course. Send it to this one, I said, spelling out my actual address. My voice was calm, controlled. By noon, the file arrived. There it was. My name, my SSN, my address, and a signature that tried to mimic mine, but didn't even come close. It was Casey's looped T that gave her away. I forwarded everything to the officer handling my ID theft report and headed to the station that same afternoon. It was cloudy, a wind picking up that threatened to bite through my sweater. The inside of the precinct felt more like a DMV than a place where lives could be repaired. Fluorescent lights, cheap carpet, tired faces. "I already filed a report yesterday," I told the front desk clerk, handing over a new folder. "This is a second fraud account. $2,000 this time." An officer took me into a side room, young and professional, but disinterested. "This kind of identity use, especially when it's family," he said. "It tends to fall more on the civil side than criminal." I stared at him. "She stole my identity, opened credit, took loans, lied on notarized leases." He nodded, scribbling notes. "I'm not saying don't pursue it, but you'll likely need to file through civil court for damages." I left frustrated, but undeterred. She wanted me quiet. She wanted me tired, but I wasn't either anymore. That evening, I was archiving files when someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, Jace, Casey's ex-boyfriend. He looked older than I remembered. Gaunter, the kind of tired you earn over time. I opened the door. "Hey," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Sorry to just show up. You got a second?" I stepped aside. "Yeah, come in." We sat across from each other, tension filling the space between us. He pulled out his phone. "I think she's still using my mom's info. I found this. An email from a few months ago. Said she was pregnant. Claimed she was in danger. Said you were her emergency contact." I blinked. "What?" He turned the screen toward me. It was Casey's writing. Dramatic, urgent, full of lies. "She got my mom to send her $1,500, Jace said quietly. "I just found out today. Thought maybe I should ask if any of it was real." I walked to the table, brought back my folder, opened it, laid it down between us. We sat in silence. "She played me," he said after a while. I nodded. "Imagine living with her." His eyes softened, pained. "If this goes legal, I'll testify, whatever you need." That night after he left, I recorded a voice note. "This is for court, for a lawyer, for truth." I labeled the files. Witness_audio1.wav, loan_doc2.pdf, fraud, _case, _master.zip. It wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about naming every crack. And who put it there? I was mid-click, dragging the next set of files into a folder when my phone lit up. "Mom." I froze, then answered. "What the hell are you doing, Keisha?" Her voice hissed. "You're dragging this family through the mud." "Why are you doing this to your own family?" She spat through the phone, like I'd personally walked into the living room and set fire to the couch. I kept my voice level. "You mean reporting a felony?" "You know Casey's been having a hard time. She's your sister. She just needs support." "She's not struggling," I said. "She's stealing, and you've been helping her do it." There was a pause on the other end, long enough for me to hear the click of her lips pressing shut. Then her tone changed, sweet but sharp, the kind of voice she used when company was over. "We're just worried about you, Keisha. You've been so distant lately, obsessing." Obsessing. That word sat in my stomach like spoiled food. I hung up without another word. Later that morning, I got an email from Jace. Subject line: "You're not going to believe this one." Inside was a forwarded message originally sent to one of his exes, a woman named Natalia, who had once met Casey briefly at a cookout. The message was written in my name. "Keisha here. Sorry for the out-of-the-blue note. I wouldn't ask unless it was serious. I'm in the hospital. We thought it was food poisoning, but they're saying it could be something worse." It went on like a screenplay. Medical bills, emergency contact issues, no phone. "If you can spare anything, please Venmo to AK Todd or reply here." The writing had all of Casey's drama and none of my vocabulary. My middle name was spelled wrong, but it had my name, my voice, my tone, badly mimicked. It was the last push I needed. I scheduled a meeting with an attorney that same afternoon. The law office was a quiet unit tucked between a nail salon and a tax prep franchise. The carpet was brown. The receptionist didn't smile much. But when the lawyer saw my file, both the physical one in a zippered binder and the USB stick I slid across the desk, he sat up straighter. "You documented everything," he said. "I had to. No one ever believed me." He clicked through, eyes darting faster with each folder. This isn't just theft, this is sustained fraud. Across multiple digital identities, accounts, and physical signatures. You've got third-party confirmation and digital proof. He looked up. We can file civil and criminal. I nodded. Make it public. The complaint was submitted by 3:47 p.m. At 4:18 p.m., my phone buzzed with a family group text. Mom, Darlene, some people would rather ruin Thanksgiving than be grateful for family. Aunt Gloria, is this about Keisha suing y'all? Casey, you always needed control, Keisha. You made me do this. I didn't reply. I opened my calendar and scheduled something I hadn't touched in 6 years. Therapy, 6:30 p.m., first session. A woman named Lisa with soft eyes and a direct voice. That night I went down my checklist again. Passwords changed, credit frozen, alerts set, all the essentials. Done. At 9:03 p.m. a voicemail landed. I played it once. Casey sobbing, screaming, accusing. You've always hated me. You're trying to destroy me. You think this makes you powerful? No, I think it makes me free. I didn't delete it. I saved it. Labeled it. Voicemail _evidence 1.m4a. Then I opened my planner. Court date confirmed, December 19th. Merry Christmas, Casey. The sun was low when I picked up Hannah from school. Gold light spilled across the cracked sidewalk like spilled syrup, and she was waiting on the bench out front, legs swinging, her backpack too big for her frame. Your mom didn't tell me you'd be here, I said as she hopped into the passenger seat. She shrugged. She said you owed her a favor. Of course she did. Back at the apartment, I made her a grilled cheese and poured apple juice into a mason jar. She sat at the kitchen table, scribbling over a half-done math worksheet, her braids flopping forward every time she leaned down. Hey, Auntie Keisha? She said suddenly, not looking up. Did you ever get that scholarship? I blinked. What? Last year I heard Mommy and Nana talking, she mumbled. They said you never found out. My chest tightened. Found out what? That you got into Ohio State, that you were going to go, but then they told them you had money problems. I leaned forward, my grilled cheese untouched. Hannah, are you sure? She nodded. Nana said she wrote them. Mommy said it was better if you stayed close anyway. The room tilted. That year had always haunted me. Senior year, I'd worked hard, filled out the FAFSA, wrote 5 essays, got the letter that said provisional approval. I'd held it in my hands, but the final packet never came. I remember asking Mom about it. I remember her voice. You probably didn't meet the GPA cutoff. It happens. Be realistic. She'd looked so certain, so matter-of-fact. I'd believed her. Now I wasn't sure I even knew what my GPA was that semester. After I dropped Hannah off, she hugged me tighter than usual. I dug into the old storage box under my bed. Sure enough, the provisional offer was still there, tucked inside a copy of my high school transcript. My GPA had been fine. I scanned the letter, took a photo. Then, hands slightly shaking, I found the email address of the scholarship board. To admissions@ohiostate.edu, subject, scholarship inquiry, 2009, K. Todd. Body. Dear Admissions, I was recently informed there may have been a withdrawal letter submitted in my name in 2009 regarding a full scholarship offer. I never authorized such a withdrawal. Please advise if there are any records of this. Thank you, Keisha Todd. 2 hours later, they replied, yes, a letter was submitted by a listed guardian citing concerns over credit health and financial instability. It requested your withdrawal. It was signed by Darlene T. Todd. Darlene, not Mom, not anymore. They hadn't just stolen my name, or my credit, or my peace. They stole my future. They took the door I'd fought to open and slammed it shut. Just so I wouldn't walk through it. Because if I left, I wouldn't be convenient, wouldn't be nearby, wouldn't be available. They didn't just lie about who I was. They made sure I never found out for myself. I sat back, the screen blurring, not from tears. I didn't cry. I burned. And beneath that heat, a new kind of clarity. They hadn't failed me. They had sabotaged me. And now they'd face me. Because I didn't lose the scholarship. It was taken. Like everything else. Friday, December 22nd arrived colder than forecasted. The sun was out, but the air bit against my face as I walked up the courthouse steps. My hands stayed deep in my coat pockets. Not from fear, but to keep them from shaking from something else entirely. Nerves? Maybe. But mostly it was the weight of finality. Inside, the courtroom was unassuming. Beige walls, worn carpet, a squeaky heater that hummed like it was tired of witnessing people fall apart. Casey arrived last. Beige coat, hair pulled back, mascara smudged like a deliberate act. She looked around, but never at me. Darlene sat beside her, dressed in all black, as if mourning a version of herself that no longer existed. I didn't look at either of them. I faced forward, my attorney to my right, a folder full of truth on the table before me. The judge reviewed the statements, credit card applications, loan documents, the scholarship records, the notarized lease. A case that once felt like a series of gut punches now sat on paper, neat, linear, undeniable. The verdict was swift. Casey was ordered to repay damages and flagged for fraud. Darlene wasn't charged criminally, but her financial involvement was noted in court records. My name was cleared. That mattered more than I expected. Outside, the air felt different. Not warmer, just lighter. Casey brushed past me without a glance. Darlene paused for half a second. "This didn't have to happen," she muttered almost to herself. "It already did," I said quietly. I just finally stopped pretending. I walked away before she could respond. For once, it was me turning my back. Not in anger, but in decision. That evening, back at my apartment, the silence felt earned. I poured a glass of wine, turned off my phone, and curled up on the couch without needing a distraction. Around 9:15, something slid under my door. No knock, no voice. A plain white envelope. Inside was a photo, me, 17, holding baby Hannah under a plastic Christmas tree. On the back, in looping handwriting that was unmistakably Hannah's, it read, "I'm sorry for how my mom treated you. Thank you for always being kind to me. H." My breath caught, not in sadness, in release. I placed the photo in my desk drawer, beside the folder that used to hold my case. There was no victory party, no celebratory text, just quiet. And that was enough. No holiday cards went out for me this year, no calls, no forced dinners. I walked to work that Monday in the cold, scarf tight around my chin. My inbox dinged. An email from Mom. I stared at it, then deleted it without reading, not in anger, in peace. And that's the thing no one prepares you for. Freedom doesn't come with trumpets. It comes with quiet, clean space, blank pages. Some people ask if it was hard cutting off my family. No, what was hard? Was pretending they never cut me first. I used to think speaking up would make me the villain. Now I know, silence only protects the ones who count on your silence. This story wasn't about revenge, it was about restoration. About reclaiming space they said I didn't deserve. About saying finally, I exist and that's enough. So if you're watching this and something inside you is nodding quietly, maybe you know how it feels to be erased. To be the peacemaker, the forgiver, the one who always folds so the table stays whole. You deserve to be heard without earning it through pain. No one talks about how healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's a quiet walk to the mailbox without dread, or deleting the text you don't owe a reply to, or waking up and not waiting for chaos. So now I'm asking you, have you ever had to cut off someone you love just to save yourself? Did this story remind you of something buried you've never said out loud? Drop a 1 in the comments if it did, or tell me where you're watching from. If this hit home, I want to hear your story too. And if it didn't land with you, that's okay. Tell me why. It matters that we talk about what's hard to say. And hey, if you're still here and this story made you feel anything, tap that subscribe button. There's more to come, more truths, more stories, more people choosing themselves. Because surviving is quiet, but healing makes noise.